good morning. Kalimera. Bonjour de Chypre. Bonjour de Paphos, capitale culturelle de l'Europe.
Dear students of European Union, good afternoon.
Bonjour, madame et messieurs.
Tere päevast.
Bonjour.
Good morning.
Buenos días.
Guten Morgen.
Hello everyone.
Good morning, Europe.
We are looking forward to sharing our ideas and listening to others. We are facing challenges offered by the European Union and at the same time eager to discuss and find the best ways of overcoming the present difficulties. We are the future and we want sustainable and peaceful development of the European Union. I'm sure that taking part in Euroscola would be a new experience for all of us.
It's important for me not to speak to you as a Swedish person, but as a European. And as a European, I share the same goals that you all do, to make the world a better place for all of our children. And on that note, I would like to thank the European Parliament, and I hope that you all have an enjoyable time here today. Thank you very much.
Je m'appelle Marc Tarabella.
My name is Marc Tarabella, and as my name suggests, my father was Italian. He emigrated in the 50s in order to seek employment in Belgium, not in the mines, but the stone quarries. My mother's Belgian. I'm a European member of the European Parliament, but Belgium is my constituency. That's Europe too, migration, but we're united in diversity. And in this European Parliament, I'm more particularly concerned with agricultural issues, rural development, obviously, the internal market, consumer protection, and I'm one of the few men on the Women's Committee, the Gender Equality and Women's Issues Committee. I think the fight for equality of opportunity, gender equality, access to sort of professions, high-ranking positions of responsibility, I think that's important. I mean, globally it's important, but it's also important in Europe, which is why I sit on the Women's Committee. So there we are. Over to you.
Pensez-vous que l'Union
Do you think the European Union is more popular now, given the rise of nationalist movements, for example, in France, Austria, Netherlands? I mean, is the European Union becoming more popular as a result of, the rise of these nationalist movements?
avec les gens européennes, après tout?
Well, I think the EU, for those of us who haven't known, I mean, I haven't, but you're even younger, so you certainly haven't known the sort of the first part of the 20th century when there were two sort of world wars. Those who were born in 1910 knew two world wars. And then we have European integration arriving on the scene in the aftermath of the Second World War. We're starting off sort of 6, 12, 15, 27, 28 member states. Talking about the war, is that moded? Nobody imagines Europeans fighting on the European continent, but if you look elsewhere, peace is far from being something one can take for granted. If you look to the east, the south of Europe. So I think this is certainly an asset that has to be preserved, safeguarded. We have achieved a common currency, freedom of movement, major achievements. My parents were involved in farming, so we didn't have an opportunity to travel much. We just move around sort of locally. But I mean, if you cross the border, you had to show your passport, your travel documents, because you can travel freely in Europe today. Some people, of course, want to call that principle into question. But I think it is a fundamental freedom of movement, freedom of goods, capitals, services, but freedom of movement of individuals, that is something that we have to safeguard. I think we have to be in a position to try and understand those who have a different culture. If you look at the former Europe of the 15, who known democracy before the two world wars, and those countries that suffered under the yoke of the Soviet Union, who had the same democratic culture, we have to be able to reach agreement. When I hear Commissioner Andriukaitis, the health commissioner, when I listen to what he has to say, I mean, he was in a gulag in Siberia up until the age of 9. He'd never seen a tree in the permafrost in farthest flung Siberia. But when amnesty was able to return to his country of origin, Lithuania. So, I mean, people have different experiences, bring different baggage with them. And I think that's important to be able to understand that people come from different cultural backgrounds. And of course, when the whole thing seems to come unstuck, you see the extremes right and left attempting to manipulate people. We see xenophobia and racism on the rise. They don't have any solutions to offer you. In fact, we don't see them very often in the European Parliament. But they suggest that they have solutions, and I think very often their approach works. But others of us, so right, left, the ecologists feel that we have to come up with solutions that represent real solutions to people's problems today.
La meilleure réponse que l'on peut donner aujourd'hui.
Do you think that the structure of the EU is sustainable and flexible enough to adjust to the changes that we're experiencing right now in the world and maybe in the future? Thank you.
Très bonne question, très interpellante, parce qu'en effet,
That's a very good question.
quand on vit un système démocratique,
if you come from a democratic system, it's certainly imperfect, but it's ours. It's difficult to move ahead quickly. I was a rapporteur on the directive on sort of public tenders. It's 90% of the EU's GDP. It took some 2 years working on that directive, loads of meetings, and when we'd finished negotiating with Council, Commission, and we reached a decision here, Parliament and Council, on a new directive. Member States then have 2 years to transpose that directive into domestic legislation, to transpose the major principles enshrined within the directive. It's a rather complex directive in terms of its administration, and of course that trickles down to the level of local authorities. It's a lengthy process, but it's a democratic one. I think the human dimension is important. When you have a meeting, several people, a small gathering, it's easier, thanks to the human dimension, to be able to reach an agreement. I'm currently writing a book in French, and Malcolm Harbour from Birmingham, he's now a professor in the UK, a British Conservative, but someone for whom I had a lot of time. He didn't necessarily have the same views on everything, but a hard-working individual and most respectable. And I pay tribute to the British members here. It's sad. I mean, there's an honesty about them. They're able to say, well, I fully disagree with what you're saying, but I respect your position. Anyway, hopefully he's going to be able to translate that into English for me. So democracies are a little bit cumbersome. It's the cost, if you like, it's the price of democracy. Sometimes democracies respond more slowly, but I think to give you a clear reply to your question, I think we need to sort of shorten decision-making times. I was talking about co-decision-making between Council and Parliament. I think governments need to be able to reach agreement on major projects, major issues, and that's the stumbling block. The European Council has to be able to say, well, this is what we're going to be doing. We'll be earmarking more of the budget. I mean, that's the kind of decision we need to be taken quickly. Who knows, perhaps a new generation of leaders who want to cooperate more one with the other. That might be one of the solutions, one of the answers. So the functioning's somewhat slow or cumbersome. That shouldn't be called into question, though. I think it's the lack of any real desire to engage in projects together. That is where I situate the real problem.
D'encore faire des projets ambitieux ensemble, qui pour moi est plus le problème.
I want to ask you, after England leaving the European Union, does other countries should be encouraged to take part in, like Switzerland, and does the European Union need them? Thank you.
Oui, ce serait bien que la Suisse puisse venir dans l'Union européenne.
Yeah, great. Love Switzerland to be a member of the European Union because it will make a significant contribution to the budget. I mean, that's just a joke, really. But Switzerland, Norway, Iceland, at some point in time, was looking to become a member. That's when there was a crisis. So, not seeking to join right now. It's a great pity. But Switzerland is part of an economic area, and they've decided, I mean, they're part of the single market, European single market, and they decided to apply European directives, the directives that we adopt here. But of course you don't have any Norwegians in this parliament. I mean, that's a status that the United Kingdom might want to have in future, so leave Europe but still have access to the single market. I mean, you know, if that's what Mrs. May wants to do, then fine, you know, they can do that, but they will have to pay like Norway does. And I think the Brexiteers were very unhappy to learn that they will have to pay on a Norwegian scale if they want access to the single market, because you actually can't have your cake and eat it too. And Norway make a contribution, and that way they are able to enjoy access to the single market. And I think that the problem right now is that we're not going to be able to enlarge further because we've got such a problem in the media. Jean-Claude Juncker, President of the Commission, was very clear when he embarked on his term of office. I mean, he said that he was the president of a commission of last resort. I mean, we would like to, have a nobler cause to rally around, but still, he said that we have to call a halt to enlargement because, we're not able to function with existing structures as a Europe of 28. But there might be Balkan countries. I mean, we've already taken in Croatia and Slovenia. I mean, it might be Serbia next. I mean, what do I know? I don't think we should slam the door shut on other countries, but I think it would be, at the very least, imprudent, unwise to enlarge other countries right now.
Peut-être bien. Sans doute même.
As he said, regarding to our project, which is climate change, and recognizing that energy is a shared competence within the EU and resulting in a lack of widespread unified legislation. We also talk about legislation. So we propose to generalize the rules for all member states in order to equalize the conditions for implementing the use of renewable energy. Furthermore, to make a plan in which renewable energy from all member states goes to the center of the European Union, and then it would be redirected from there to all the countries. Like that, everybody would have access to it, regardless of the country they are. We also suggest to issue programs to increase the concern on people and also increase their feeling towards climate change. Furthermore, we have helping developing countries, educating them on how they should take into account what they have to make solar planners or use in windmills. We also talked about education, which was a really, really debated topic. And we come to the conclusion that changing the education system in all member states, including an ecology subject, and also integrating environmental issues on subjects like history, it would be fundamental. We also, like that, we would change the European values from the beginning, because the values of the children are established from childhood.
There are many laws in the EU and each country that protect equality, they protect human rights, they protect privileges, but this is not accepted by the society in many cases. So, as Frederick Douglass once said, we have to build strong children than repair men. And that's why we have to educate young people. We have to start from the youth, because they will be the future of the EU and each member state of the EU. So, about the second one, security. We asked to have strict security and to keeping track of people that cross the borders without violating Schengen zone. That must be clear. We just want to keep in track people that go in and out of the country, so we'll have the data of the area. And for the data protection, that citizens must be aware of their rights. That small button that you have to press accept, which is for terms and conditions, that is your right, and that you accept your data to be on the internet and be available to everyone. You have the right to protect yourself. Companies must not sell your personal data to third parties or to other campaigns for their use.
We kind of veered towards helping the people instead of not helping them, and obviously, as would most people agree. So we kind of decided that if we were to give to countries, that they would give back to us, possibly in the near future, in the far future, or anytime soon. This is harder than it looks. So basically, as we talked a lot about the United States helping us out of difficulty, especially in the 1950s after World War II, all the world wars, and we really focused in on the United States giving us the money and how we were going to, in a way, repay them, or in a different kind of way, repay another country. So as they gave us help, we would give a different country help, if that makes sense. What a big quote was that came up was, what goes around comes around. And that kind of really sticks out in my mind anyway. And so we kind of focused in on how we would give money, or not even money, it could be in different forms of payment to developing countries, such as like any of them in Africa. There's quite a lot in Africa. So we came up with paying, just giving money over, or we could send groups over, or fund the Red Cross, or any of these kind of Chokra, all these different organizations to go over there and help educate people, which is the largest form of steering away from war and terror and peace.
The first of them was about the relationship that Europe should have with other countries. Many of the students mentioned that it would be a great idea Europe to cooperate with Russia, because that will help us to get some sources of help in an economical term. But at the end, we decided that it's much better to focus on expanding the cooperation within European Union. The second conclusion we came with was that education must be provided with more information on the European Union. That's something that we all understood before with the voting that we did in that room. Some of my colleagues mentioned that the texts that are promoted in school should be less advanced. so they can be understood by a whole lot of people.
Over 1 million migrants came into the EU last year. Others have come in what they perceive as a more stable EU, and others, like those people you see in this picture, have come due to war, conflict, and in search of a country where their dignity is guaranteed and where their human rights are respected. Just like the Syrian woman you see here, it's a picture I took from the BBC last night. Embracing her child. One of the root problems which concerned our committee is that there has been a high and disproportionate amount of people in a small number of countries. For example, we have observed a high concentration of people in 2 to 3 countries whose economies are already burdened, like Italy and Greece. What is the proposal of our committee is that there should be a common response by the EU to ensure that the refugees and the migrants are proportionately allocated or even attracted in EU countries. For example, financial support could be also given to countries which do not traditionally attract refugees in order to incentivize them to do so. Additionally, a very interesting point suggested by our committee is a proposal that migrants receive funding only under the condition that they accept to receive lessons on culture, language, and values, which should, as a consequence, boost their human capital and employability. After all, as the Nobel Prize activist Malala Yousafzai said, one book, one teacher, and one pen and one child can change the world. Last but not least, the committee suggests that focus should be placed on tolerance accompanying a change in our perceptions, which is of course a long-term progress, but it's really vital in order to integrate the migrants in our societies. And despite the fact that migration has been politicized before it was analyzed. On a last note, we would like to urge you to vote for us, and we would like to highlight that migration should not be seen as a problem, but as a process. Coming together is a beginning, keeping together is progress, but working together is success.
The first point that we decided upon is that schools should collaborate with companies to give young people vocational courses, traineeships, apprenticeships. Schools do not educate young people in a way that they are prepared for the job market. This proposal for schools to collaborate with companies will garner more experience for young people. It will be easier for them to get a job later on. It will teach them real-life skills that will help out later on, and young people will feel what that particular job is really like when they cannot know just sitting in a classroom reading about it. Another point we discussed, and I will propose today, is that schools should spend more time educating young people about career choices. We are not born knowing everything. Young people don't know a lot about the world, and schools should devote more time and more attention to a young person's choice of profession. Young people must be educated about, for example, possible unemployment, choosing a very, very popular profession, or a profession that is expected to be pushed out by constantly advancing technology. As they say, knowledge is power, and educating young people will lead to young people rationally choosing their future, and it will increase the likelihood of more young people being employed.